Alone Australia recap number 9. Can't believe we've got past episode 9. It's actually pouring down rain today, so I'm doing it under my sort of pergola thing. I've had enough rainy weather down there, so no need to go and stand out more. Okay, Michael. Yep, big decision to move camp, and I reckon you probably made the right one. It's very difficult to make a decision, make an assessment on someone's decision from afar because you just really don't know what they're dealing with. But just because I was in a similar kind of area, I think he probably didn't. If he'd stayed where he was, he probably wouldn't have got a lot of fish. He'd been fishing for a long time, and so he decided to move. Good on him. And I think the main thing that strikes me there is he's an unassuming guy, and he has a lot of tenacity. I mean, he's up to day 28, and he's had no decent food, and he's still cracking on, still got a smile on his face, and just measures himself really well. So you can't really assess how someone is going to be in terms of resilience if you're assessing somebody else unless you've actually seen or have verified proof how they've gone in a situation where it's got to be demonstrated. So he's obviously got a lot of resilience, and he's still trucking on. So good on you, Michael. It's awesome. Right, Gina. Gina was doing the fishy dance. I kind of wonder whether I should be doing a fishy dance. Maybe I should put that in my survival priorities. She was clearing out her fishing site. That's a good idea because there's just so many snags. Just unbelievable. To begin with there, she's talking about not feeling alone. And I feel the same way when I'm out there. It's not a feeling of loneliness. But then she's exploring other sides of her emotions where she's, unpacking, stuff about the grief of losing Blaze and stuff. And that's what adventures do. They allow you the space to unpack everything without all of the distractions of everyday life. When you have those things that are important to you taken away, food, shelter, water, all those kinds of things. So that's why adventures are such healthy things to do. And you experience the full range of human emotion. So I remember crying, catching a fish on my adventure before going up onto Alone. And I never probably would have cried in my whole life out of happiness. I didn't even know that kind of thing happened. So it's now that we're getting into those latter stages, all of those things are being forgotten about the past. And she even said, it's hard for her to reference her life outside now. And that's what a really good adventure is. And that's why long adventures are really worthwhile. Because if you've only been out for 3 weeks on an adventure, you don't know what you're missing. So, really interesting watching her journey there. And she's digging deep into herself. And the same way that anyone that's been out there for that amount of time, that's when the digging deep starts to really happen. It sort of started for me around kind of that stage as well. Okay, my stuff. I think we started off with me going for a swim for that eel. I'm obviously a complete wuss when it comes to cold water. And like when I go skiing and stuff and backcountry and I'll hike across streams and we got to, step out on the snow, walk through a nice river and get out. I'm in a lot of pain doing that. And other people around me, it hurts them, but I seem to be in more pain. So I'm a wuss around cold water. So it took me a while to get used to it. I didn't actually get used to it, but then I started to worry about, I haven't been in there for 15 minutes. I'm just burning a lot of energy, shivering. Shivering burns a lot of energy to warm you up. I just couldn't hack at it for too long. So you might wonder why I had my boots on to begin with. That's because I was wearing my boots in the kayak and I was like, I'm pretty confident I could swim with these boots on, but I just want to check. So I'm going in the water for a swim anyway. I may as well check. So I did that. Yep, I can find that. They floated and I could swim doggy paddle, no worries. So I just chucked them off. Plus, I like the idea of having some feet protection there, but they were too buoyant anyway. So when I went out and then down, obviously I had to spin around and go down head first because I was too buoyant. That life preserver thing still had some buoyancy in it, even though it's not inflated. The problem was when I went down head first, I probably only got 2.5 meters down. But first thing, I think a branch hit me in the head and then I got a graze on my shin from kicking something as well. And basically, I could feel these logs, and it wasn't the bottom. I knew how deep it was. I knew it was 4 to 5 meters because when I dropped the baits down, I could tell from my pulley system how much line went out. I'm like, this place is deep. It was so. I was hitting these. I think it was actually a tree underwater that was in its like life position, and there was logs caught up in that. So I'm feeling around, and I couldn't even. I could feel a fork where the line had gone through, and I was trying to reach past that, and I knew there was at least 2 meters of line on the other side of that, and this fish or eel would have gone spun around everything. There's no way I was going to keep going under all that, this big mess of branches. You know, in clear water, warm water, where I could see, yeah, but not when I'm already struggling to hold my breath because it's so cold, it's dark, and there's a real chance of getting stuck on the way up. Yeah, and it took me half a day to warm up from that. It's pretty chilly. Anyway, you got to try these things. I think I mentioned in there, like, if I didn't go for that swim, and you know, I always would be wondering, you know, did I do everything? And so by doing absolutely everything you can, in kind of you sort of inoculate yourself against guilt, because there's nothing to ever feel guilty or bad about. It's like when I was talking about that Air Force thing. Like, I've had this goal that I wanted to be a fighter pilot and all that kind of stuff. And man, I put in 100% effort. And when I didn't end up getting there, there was nothing to feel disappointed about, because there's nothing I could have done. There was no time that I slackened off. There was no time that I didn't optimise my performance at all. So it's a happy way to be, really, if you just try your best at the things that matter to you the most, which is what I try to do. Obviously, you can't do your best at everything, otherwise you'd be so busy all the time and not focus on what's important. Anyway, what else did I do? You can see some improvements around my camp in the background. So that I've got a bed, so I made a bed. I cut planks using the mallet and some bush wedges that I made, and made slats, and then I placed the stringy bark slab over the top, and that's about 1 inch thick. It's kind of like maybe 15 mil of wood bark, and then it's probably 2 centimeters of dry, kind of insulative bark. So it made a good mattress with insulation. It does make you feel a lot more comfortable, but just being able to sit on a bed and lie on a bed, being out of the muck, it's nice. I made a table you can see outside as well. That might seem like a waste of effort, but I do so many tasks, whether it's gutting a fish, making stuff, cutting things, just placing something down, keeping it out of the mud. So it took a bit of effort, but that table was really, really nice. So I'm pretty set up in my camp now. I've got my little camp chair, which I can move under the shelter when it's raining, out of the shelter, down to the river. Sometimes I'd hike around the side, go fishing there. Sometimes I'd hike around another area, go fishing there. All the while doing other tasks. So like I'd take a task with me, sit there, fish there, you know, just try all these things depending on which way the wind was blowing, so I'm out of the wind. Problem was the rain, so when it rained I'd just come back in the shelter and watch the lines from there and just keep going with my tasks. Yeah, that trout. So hooked a trout, it got stuck around snags. It's just snags everywhere. So this trout had gone around the outside of a log, and so if I'd pulled it, it would have snapped the trout off. And I was right up to the edge of my boots, like I had about a centimetre of freeboard over the top of my boots, and I'm trying to reach this thing. I eventually got it in the net. It's just the complications of fishing there. It's just ridiculously snaggy. And I went for that trip to the West River, as I called it, and trolled all the way there. It was so snaggy. It was hard to even just fit the kayak through the snags. Like it was hard to get there. Like it was hundreds of meters of just trees that were like a metre apart or less, and it was really hard just picking my way through to get there. And for anyone that's fished in Australia, like for trout, I was just so amazed at how poor the fishing was. That was a good lure, and I was casting it into an area where there was a stream coming in. Just unbelievable how bad the fishing was. And so, you know, like going back to Michael, people might just think, oh, Michael's a crap fisherman. You know, there's not a lot of skill. Like if you put a worm on a hook, there's not many ways you can do it right. It's just, if you have the lines out and you're not catching fish, and I tried a whole bunch of experimentation, right? if you're not catching the fish, it's because the fish aren't catchable. So all this fancy stuff I was doing with lures and stuff was just icing on the cake, just to see if there was any other method of getting fish, and there just wasn't. So yeah, just unbelievable. And I certainly got chilly coming back from that, and that's just the constant thing. Like it's a rainy day today, and there's just like sometimes it'll be sunny and then it'll rain, sunny, rain. So you're just gambling, and I got pretty wet, cold. Could have been worse though. So a lot of those shots, talking about the rains, it's actually because of the rain today. I actually chucked a GoPro just over there. It's like this one. This one's not on a tripod, but a lot of the time I was capturing time lapse during the day and night with my GoPro. So a lot of those cloud shots you see, you know, when we're talking and then we go to those time lapse shots of the clouds streaming past, a lot of that's GoPro, and I'm just selecting like an interval of, you know, like half a second to up to 10 seconds, depending on how fast the clouds are moving and whether I'm trying to catch the sun going down or something like that. And also at night, I used the GoPro to get time lapses. So there's a shot in there of my paddle leaning up against a tree with the Milky Way moving slowly in the background. That's a GoPro on a 30-second exposure using 1600 ISO. And I would plug it in with all the power banks I could. And in the cold weather, it would run out of battery after, I don't know, maybe 6 hours. So I couldn't get the whole night through. A lot of the time, the shots would be ruined because condensation would just build on the lens. But I spent a fair bit of effort doing filming stuff as well, just because, you know, I don't know, it's kind of what I do, and I enjoy seeing a good shot. And unfortunately for us, they didn't want us to look at the back of the screen and review our footage in case we accidentally deleted something. So I didn't get any feedback to know whether it was all working. It was just from memory. I'm like, I think this setting is going to work. So I'm seeing it for the first time on TV. So I'm like, oh, that one worked. Yeah, there must have been plenty that didn't though. Someone else asked me on social media, can you talk about how many people I thought was out there? And I kind of covered it in that episode. And yeah, I just didn't know, basically. But when I said now might be the time when people are leaving, so 28 days is 4 weeks. And a lot of people work in weeks. And I knew day 30 would be another one that people tend to just like mentally prepare for. But yeah, I just didn't know, and it didn't really matter. I always envisaged in my mind, right, someone else is going to be out there and they're going to be playing hard. So just assume that you're in a running race with someone else who's really good, and so expect the worst. And that mindset's a good one, because if you go in there and you have anything like, oh, I don't think these other people will last, and then all of a sudden it starts dragging out, you're like, oh, what's going on? What do I, you know, and yeah, just so always prepare for the worst is what I was thinking there. I imagine that there can't have been too many people out there because it was rubbish. But I always did wonder, has someone else got a better fishing spot? Like, it wouldn't, I don't know, it just seemed so bad where I was. So, yeah, I can't believe there's only 2 episodes left. And yeah, make sure you stay tuned for the next one, next 2. And thanks for watching.